Anyway, flew in from the last of the Node.js Live series for the Node.js Foundation. Really happy to be here. Talking with David about setting up and co-organizing an event around this time, the timing wasn't quite right. Instead of doing that, I decided to come back to js.la and share. So I'm gonna have a bit of more of a trip down memory lane than a deeply technical talk. Here we are, 7 years into Node's history, we have an opportunity now to look back at the decisions that we made in the creation of this platform and how that's played out over time. What that means to Node.js. So I'm Dahl. If you had a chance to grab the pink angry unicorn stickers, that's me. Thanks. I'm the CTO and co-founder of NodeSource. Been around Node world for forever. Worked at a bunch of Node.js startups. You may recognize my loud voice from NodeUp. I love building community, created NodeBots Day, Enterprise.js, SF Node, recently just piloted a online meetup that we're gonna do every second Wednesday online with something called Crowdcast. It felt good. It felt like a meetup, and that was really trying to emulate that sense of we're getting together, we're sharing, we're learning, but doing that in the context of community, not in the context of be broadcast. I do webinars for NodeSource and all that stuff, and that's great. You're getting kind of sold to in those situations. Meetups more about sharing, more about learning, and lifting up members of the community and helping people share and express themselves. Key little detail here. Before Node and all this startup, my background is healthcare, defense, and education. So I come from a very enterprisey background. So all that startups mixed with that enterprise kind of leads up to this NodeSource thing. You combine the two, and NodeSource is kind of the product of those two things. We created NodeSource to bring some commercialization of Node.js as a platform. If you think of Cloudera, data stacks, WordPress, that's what NodeSource does in the Node.js space. But that's it for the businessy things. Let's talk about Node and the beginning of Node. So Ryan Dahl, the creator of Node, is a deep, sort of intense hacker type individual. Ryan, when he was exploring creating Node, he was looking to build a more efficient application server. So really looking at Rails and MERB and some of the alternatives, was not happy with the level of performance that that was able to deliver. Basically went into the mountains of Chile and closed himself in kind of hermetically and sorry. Began building this platform. Wanted to improve application development. It's created right around the time that GitHub was coming into relevance. So there's a real interesting historical moment where prior to Node, we had jQuery that moved into GitHub, and you began to really see how modern open source was happening, and how individuals contributing to a platform were interacting, engaging, learning together, and building code. So Ryan, with that perspective, brought Node into the world in this incredible new platform, this social platform for code. 7 years later, and like GitHub is all the things, right? Most developers spend all of our time in GitHub, but having Node developed in this unique way, really led to an incredible sense of ownership that individual members of the Node community feel this very strong connection, sense of ownership, sense of being able to participate and contribute to this project because its creator built it that way. Now, when Ryan was looking at how to build a incredibly efficient application platform, looked at system level tools and was like, all right, here's this concept of the event loop that we can use to really power this and make it work right. Ryan's not a JavaScript, Node has become the platform for JavaScript. Whether it's front-end JavaScript, web server, API, and now with Electron, our desktop apps are all built with Node and JavaScript. But Ryan's very much a C hacker. But since we're building a system with this evented I/O architecture, it's a perfect fit for JavaScript. You think of like what are the platforms that you're aware of that are the languages that you're aware of that are really event oriented. JavaScript's one of the only ones that stand out there. So an incredible fit with JavaScript, and a funny thing along that line, Node Source, we work primarily on Node.js. So Node is like in its internals is this thin layer of JavaScript API on top of a bunch of C++ bindings. So if you're building Node, you're actually going to spend a lot more time in C++ land and lower levels than the surface layer API that Node consumes. So oftentimes folks will be like, oh, I want to go work at Node Source because we're going to do Node. But like we're doing Node, but like we're doing Node. So we're building the low-level systems, and we do build our stuff with Node.js. But a lot of the stuff is at that level. At inception, it's hard to imagine in today's Node ecosystem, but we didn't have any package managers. It was just raw, and you vendored a lot of stuff, and did some other crazy stuff. And Ryan has very strong Unix philosophy. So you look at Node, even though we run fully cross-platform, the paradigms and the ethos around Node is very much influenced by that Unix philosophy of simplicity. So this is the original Node logo. One little detail that I love is Ryan's website. It's still up today. tinyclouds.org. Inside the logo, there's this little tiny cloud, and that turned out to be incredibly prescient because today, all of our computing systems are running on the cloud, and increasingly we're running in little tiny clouds inside of Dockers, not in like these big systems. But it's these microservices and systems. So it's really panned out to be a fantastic representation of where we went with it all. So I'm going to go through all of these points and discuss how these influenced Node's growth and what came of those early design decisions. So Node ships with batteries included. So I spent a lot of time as a Java developer, and if you're just starting with a raw Java-based system, you're probably spending a week setting things up. You install the JDK, and then you need the this, that, and the other, and you got to go grab Maven, or maybe you're doing Ant, and everything is this next stage of Yakshave and configuration that you have to get to finally do the creative effort that you had intended to do. Node bundles all of that and comes with that all out of the box. So you can install Node and instantly get going. That single factor is essentially why I left Java and did Node. I was
not to mention hundreds of lines of XML with Java.
Absolutely. Just get the configuration set up properly. So the turning point for me in my Node adoption back at the time that HTML5 was an emerging standard, I was building WebSocket-based systems, and getting a Java-based WebSocket server set up was a huge pain. Is still a huge pain. And then you have the challenge, you're building interactive systems. If you're building WebSocket-based systems, you want a lot of people to connect and interact. It's really tuned for this real-time interactive systems. And you really want the interaction. It's not the server. The server's kind of dumb and just needs to be there as a utility. So after spending so much time just getting Java set up to go do WebSockets, I went and this is 0.1, 0.2 pulled this WebSocket server and was able to get that up and running in a matter of moments. And then I'm doing the interactive work, right? You get your back end propped up enough, and then you build out the front end capabilities, and you want to go and add additional capabilities on the back end. And it's like, wow, this completely changes how you build software, because I can manipulate both sides of that equation and build interactions incredibly easily. So Node comes with everything that you need. Earliest days, we had to go grab VA, the V8 VM, and bundle it in. That's there. The underlying JavaScript language capabilities in Node.js are not done by Node at all. It's all coming from the underlying VM. That's baked in. It's a part of what you're getting out of the box, so you don't have to go and bring that to bear. In addition to that, we have originally Node was built on libev, libevent. So the underlying event loop infrastructure is provided by, was provided by libev. In the 0.6 iteration, we brought Node to be fully cross-platform. So couldn't really call it, libev is kind of the perfect name for it. Yeah, it's libevent. And it's providing this event infrastructure. libev really doesn't mean anything. libev is sort of jokingly referred to as unicorn velociraptor. So if you see the unicorn dinosaur, that is the unicorn velociraptor in the symbol of libuv. So in addition to the JavaScript layer, the VM, and libuv, Node bakes in HTTP parser, OpenSSL is probably the number one bane of our core team's life, just dealing with all of the security issues. So the vast majority of security patches that we get to Node is actually in this batteries included subsystem that we're working with. C-Arrays provides some of the DNS functionality, and we added zlib I think around the fairly late to natively handle compression in the platform. One of the notable exceptions to the battery included is the internationalization capability. It's just so huge that we can't include the entirety of all the internationalization options, and honestly, not enough users, really get into that part of the system to take advantage of that. So that's something that if you're really integrating language sets, you do have to kind of sideload. And definitely not least, Node.js ships with its package manager built in. So as soon as you get started developing Node applications, you can npm install, pull down all your dependencies, and you're off to the races and productive. So interesting. Chris is going to be our next speaker, Chris Lay. An interesting challenge with that batteries included philosophy is it actually goes against the Debian philosophy of everything has to be built on a Debian system and then linked as much as possible to keep everything sort of harmonious and individually working properly. And Node optimizes for developer experience and your productivity rather than Debian optimizes for the long-term stability of the operating system platform. So that's the reason why Chris Lay created the PPAs, which eventually became the node source distributions for Debian and now Red Hat. So you can just go drop that in, get it set up, and off you're going. So Node was built with a very liberal license. 7 years later, MIT is kind of the some flavor of very liberal license, especially MIT is really the de facto standard of any open source library these days. But back when Node started, we had the major reference point of the jQuery project, which was dual license, GPL and MIT, and the fact that Node was so liberally licensed, I very much attribute our ability to continue to develop and work on the project during the IOJS days, and it's Node.js is protected by copyright, right? So the Node core contributors were not able to release anything that is called Node.js. But everyone was able to continue to work on that code base and have the discussions that eventually led us to bring it into a foundation. So not only has this changed and influenced the industry, it also saved our behinds. So it was very nice. An interesting change in platforms that was very much against the grain is Node doesn't ship with a standard library. PHP, has all, this massive standard library. It was just, a common pattern that if you're going to provide a application platform, you provide everything and you do everything as much as you can. Instead, with the perspective that Brian shared, standard libraries is where code goes to die. Built Node with a very small core philosophy. So, Node in and of itself is as small as it can be, and a lot of the decision points on whether it needs to be in the core platform often back up to the fact that again, it's the C++ and JavaScript. If you need access to V8, libuv, all this other C++ code, it's really a lot easier to manage that in core. But in terms of building out JavaScript and the code that we use and the libraries that use, frameworks that we use, all of that is pushed out into userland, and that's led to Node being the single largest by twice as much as Java, single largest package ecosystem in the world. So a great decision, and it's enabled that framework, those frameworks, and the userland ecosystem to grow and evolve over time. But Node's remained very constant in that. I often hear individuals refer to Node as a language. And I cringe a little bit. It's a platform, blah blah blah. But Node's stability is really almost language level sort of reliability and behind the scenes. And oftentimes you're using Happy and all the frameworks that are abstractions on top of that. So it's been great, and in front end world, we've gone through all kinds of different iterations of platforms and frameworks over the 7 years, and Node has continued to be the stable underlying system that we're using across all of those. So, how many Yarn fans do we have in here? Nobody? All right, a couple folks. Yeah, all right. So Node chose to standardize on a single package management solution. Today may be a little bit of a more controversial decision, but back when I started writing Node, we had vendored code, we had Git submodules. It was awful, and Kiwi, which T.J. Holloway-Chuck wrote, and early iteration of NPM. And eventually we decided, all right, let's make it easy for Node developers to use a package manager, managing your dependencies in a very predictable way makes developing applications easier. So we got together and talked it through, and TJ was like, yeah, go for it. I've got to go create, another, 10 billion frameworks. And Isaac was like, I want to go and really take this, NPM idea and go deep with this. I learned, from some of the systems inside of Yahoo, how to build out, very reliable package management. I want to go deep into it. So in version 6, we began to ship npm as the de facto package management solution. And again, it's the largest registry of any language. We're at 350,000 packages, and I think it's like 10,000 a day get created. It's nuts, absolutely nuts. And Node is fully cross-platform. It was a kind of against the grain design decision at the time. You had Redis and some other systems that were just eschewing that, like, we'll do Linux. It's the best platform. You're going to run it on your server anyway. We're only going to build out for those platforms. But even though there is that sort of deep ingrained core Unix philosophy, this is a platform for developers, and developers are using Windows. And in fact, a lot of developers are using Windows. About 50% of Node users globally are running Windows. So don't let all these shiny Apple machines fool you. Get out of California and you'll see a lot more Windows. Big shout out to Microsoft. They put in a lot of effort and investment to make 0.6 happen and be fully cross-platform. So it's still a bit of a pain to do some things on Windows, but the growth of Node.js. If we, back in the 0.6 days, we decided, to just stay Unix and be purist, I don't think that Node would have the 5 million users worldwide that it does today. Cut that in half. And last but not least, Node applications run everywhere, and write once, run everywhere is a thing that Java aspired to, and the reality is much more write once, debug everywhere. Especially if we're just writing JavaScript code, you can take that code and it can be run on your small embedded devices, your desktop, your front end code, your back end code, and it all just works. Native code is an exception there, but companies like Netflix and others are deciding that all right, I get the maximum reliability and portability just sticking with JavaScript, and are choosing to do universal JavaScript and not rely on native code for the simplicity that it brings. So a lot of platform decisions, and 7 years down the line played out, and really brought a platform that I love to write code for, and it's a joy to develop with. So thanks for sort of following me down memory lane, and look forward to chatting with you about.
Other things that can cause trouble or interest or operational complexity is the module ecosystem within the Node community. So NPM, in no way humble opinion, is both the great blessing and the great curse of the ecosystem. It's a massive repository. It is the biggest software packages repository in existence, which is saying something, because